It is my pleasure to introduce our experts, Professor Giridhar Rao. His topic is on translation, Esperanto, and politics of language. Professor Giridhar Rao teaches at Azim Premji University, Bengaluru. He teaches courses on language and literature in education, English language pedagogy in multilingual India, children literature, Esperanto and linguistic democracy, and science fiction. Before coming to Azim Premji University, he worked as an editor and public awareness officer at the Crop Research Institute, popularly known as ICRISAT Hyderabad. His PhD dissertation was titled Beyond the Sense of Wonder, Science Fiction as Adventure Fiction. His interest in science fiction led him to learn the language Esperanto. He has several publications in English and Esperanto on these themes. A number of his publications can be accessed on Academy Education website. Professor Giridhar Rao associations with National Translation Mission is since the initiations of Translation Training Program. With this brief introduction, I request Professor Giridhar Rao to give the lecture. Sir, I welcome you.
Thank you for being here. I wanted to introduce you to the language Esperanto, but through the lens of translation and politics of language generally. So the talk is in these three parts. First, a brief part about inequality in the traffic of translation as it happens in the world. And it should be a really familiar idea, familiar phenomenon to you. The second part is about Esperanto itself, a brief, rapid overview of what the language is, why it is interesting and worth thinking about for all of us who are interested in languages. And finally, a section about the kinds of ideas that Esperanto embodies about languages, world languages, about languages in the world. So those are the three parts. And then I hope we will have 20 minutes or so, or maybe even a little more, to talk about various matters related to Esperanto and the politics of language. So to do that, let me just share my screen at the moment. So I will be talking about these three things: Esperanto, translation, Esperanto, and the politics of language. I will begin with this datum, with this data. UNESCO, the United Nations organization UNESCO, maintains an index of translations. Between 1957 and 1966, an analysis of the translations in that index showed that 70% of the translations, for 70% of the translations in that index, the source languages were just 4 languages: English, French, German, and Russian. Just 4 languages. All the world's other languages constituted only 30% as source languages. You can immediately see how lopsided, how asymmetric this data indicates. This indicates about the cultural traffic, translation traffic across the world. Well, the reasons are pretty familiar. I hardly need to tell you that they are nothing to do with whether these languages are beautiful or not beautiful, whether they are capable or not capable. The point is that these are powerful languages. These were languages of empire. These were languages that have had massive amounts of state support. The governments over generations have been funding translations in these languages. And of course, well-developed markets for it and so on. You can immediately see the comparisons that we can make in India with English in India, right? So the completely lopsided presence of English in India. So this is the kind of broad world picture that I wanted to show you. In contrast, I wanted to contrast it with a much smaller market, much smaller enterprise of the Esperanto traffic into Esperanto. In the same period between 57 and 66, 1957 and 66, only 304 translations. But 50% of those translations were from Chinese, Vietnamese, Dutch, and Japanese. And a subsequent analysis between 1991 and 2003 had 1,000 translations, about 1,000 translations, but only 30% were from the big four, the big four being English, French, German, and Russian. Only 30% were from the big four. But there was 5% each from languages like Yiddish, which you may not even have heard of, or you may have, but only heard of, Portuguese, Polish, Chinese, Japanese, and Hungarian. So I wanted to frame the talk, frame what I'm going to say, in the light of this massive asymmetry between the translation traffic in the world and translation traffic in Esperanto, in the language Esperanto. Let me now turn to what Esperanto is. Why should, to give you a kind of idea, a kind of overview of what Esperanto is. What is it? It's a planned language for international communication. Why should one think about it? Well, it's easy. It's easy to learn, and we'll see more evidence of that later in the talk. And fun, great fun to learn. And so one of the results is that people who've put in that effort to learn the language have friends in all kinds of places. Brazil, France, and Japan, for example, I've given. And these are people I chat with now on the net pretty much every week. And they don't need English. Please remember, unlike us, their higher education is in their mother tongue. It is in Brazilian Portuguese. It is in French. It is in Japanese. They don't need English. And they don't know any English. So most of my Esperanto friends hardly know hardly any English. And they don't need it. Further, learning Esperanto promotes intercultural dialogue. Heaven knows we need such dialogue badly in this world today, right? But also for fun, and not just for serious matters like global warming and terrorism and stuff like that, but also this kind of thing, this question that my Brazilian friends often ask me. One of the major television serials in Brazil shows an Indian family. And this is one of the major questions that comes up. What is this thing that you guys in India call an arranged marriage? What is an arranged marriage? So those kinds of questions, to discuss those kinds of questions, you need quite a bit of language, right? You can't just do the kind of language that I'm going to show you next, which is a kind of basic language of Esperanto, like you would in any language, right? How does it sound? Mia nomo estas Giridhar. Mi estas de Bengaluru. Bengaluru estas la chef urbo de la landparto Karnataka. Karnataka estas en Suda Barato, southern India. Barato, Bharat, India. Karnataka estas en Suda Barato. Barato estas granda lando en la continento Azio. I'm sure you understood all of that without any problem. And also, you must have noticed all these O sounds, right? Azio, continento, barato, chef urbo, landparto, nomo. All nouns in this language, in Esperanto, all nouns end in O. Granda lando, granda, big. All adjectives end in A. Estas, mia nomo estas Giridhar. Estas is present tense, estes past tense, estos future tense. Same thing for all verbs. Present tense ends in as, so manjas, manjes, manjos. Dormas, dormis, dormos. Regular language, right? Makes it much easier to learn that regularity. This is the man who initiated it, Zamenhof, Zamenhof, born in 1859, dies in the middle of the peak of World War I. He is a man who designed a language for dialogue, for peace, and so on. And he more or less dies a heartbroken person seeing the massacre, the violence around him in World War One. Zamenhof. His own language profile, his own linguistic profile was that he spoke Russian, Polish, and German fluently. He spoke Yiddish, French, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and English less well. He had some knowledge of Spanish, Lithuanian, and Volapük. In July 1887, he launched La Unua Libro. Now, you Esperantists already know that Unua must be an adjective because it ends in A, Libro must be a noun, the first book, right? The first book, 134 years ago. He wrote some original poetry, translated the Old Testament of the Bible, Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, Goethe's works, Heine, Schiller, Gogol. So a variety of translations. And notice that these are not translations of engineering manuals, medical texts. These are all literary works. He's had a strong belief that if the language had to work, it had to be beautiful. It had to work aesthetically. Otherwise, it wouldn't work for people. People wouldn't bother to learn it if it was ugly in some sense, or aesthetically unpleasing. So the translations were a major part of making Esperanto a part of the world's languages. The beauty of translating poetry. I mentioned in the last slide Spanish, Lithuanian, and Volapük. Volapük? Well, yes, Volapük was another planned language, another designed language by a Jesuit priest called Schleyer, who was a remarkable man, remarkable person, right? So Esperanto was certainly not the first such effort. In fact, there are over 1,000 such experiments, initiatives, ideas of designing a language for humanity. Here's a list of planned languages, starting with the letter A. That's all, with the letter A. The first one is called something Awanian, perhaps, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And the last one in this list is called Aes. This is from the Esperanto Wikipedia, about which I'll speak in a moment. Listo de plan lingua, list of planned languages. And you can see such a large number of experiments have been tried out. Esperanto is the only one that has taken off, that has succeeded. And in fact, Esperanto has become the repository, a library of information about such experiments, not surprisingly. Esperantists are interested in how did people go about thinking about creating a language, designing a language, and then implementing it. I said Esperanto was easy. Here is the evidence for that. I'll do this with the word for horse. Cavallo, it's a noun. It has to end in O. Cavallo, C with a hat is a ch. Cavallo, cavallino, female horse. Cavalido, baby. Cavalidino, female baby. Cavalleo, J is pronounced like a Y, like the English Y, as in German languages, Germanic languages, yeah, they go, right? Cavalleo, place of horse, in this case, stable. Cavalla, A ending, must be an adjective, horse-like or equine. Now notice how consistent this is. Cavallo, cavallino, cavalido, cavalidino, cavalleo, and cavala. If you claim that you knew the word family for horse in English, you would need to know at least these words, right? Horse, stallion, mare, foal, colt, filly, stable, horse-like, and equine. 9 words, 9 spellings, 9 etymologies, 9 reasons for a nightmare. Not here. You just have one series of words. You can see how easy the word formation is, right? I can change this to elefanto, elefanteo. I don't even need to tell you what that means. It's a place for an elephant. I don't know what a place for an elephant is. Perhaps a forest. I don't know. Perhaps a shed somewhere. Elefanta, elephant-like, huge, right? So you can do this for anything. Hundeyo, hundo is dog. Hundeyo, place of dog, kennel, right? So you can create these words, and those suffixes or affixes. The affixes, the prefixes and suffixes together called the affixes. The affixes tell you what function it has. Some more examples of that. The affixoi, affixes. Arbo is a tree. Ar is the suffix for collection of. So arbaro becomes a collection of trees. That's a forest. Vorto, word. Vortaro, dictionary. Homo, Homo sapiens, humans. Homaro, humanity. Il is a tool, a suffix for a tool. So scribi is to write. Scribilo is a writing tool. Scribilaro, you can combine the il and the r. There becomes a bunch of things to write with. Stationery, whatever. Any number of possibilities there. Scribilaro, pens, erasers, papers, whatever. These suffixes, these affixes, can become words in themselves. So in, as in chavalino, for example, number 2 here in this list, chavalin, in can become a word in itself. So ino, as a noun, is the standard word for female. Ido is a baby, a child. Aro is a mathematical, is the word for the mathematical set, Venn diagrams are intersecting and union of sets and so on. Aro. Ilo is tool, Ao is place, Ispo is professional. So they are words in themselves. These are lexical affixes. The standard word for feminism is a combination of these. Inismo, ism as in Hinduism, I guess. It's a ism is a belief word, a suffix. Yeah, inismo. Ilaro is a toolkit. Il is tool, R is collection of, O is the noun marker. Ilaro. So it's a highly productive morphology, derivational, right? You can derive the word from its components and agglutinating quite intensively so. One result is that in the bidirectional dictionary by Wells, John Wells, 2010, there are only 10,300 entries in the Esperanto section, the headwords, but 22,000 in the English section of that dictionary. So those 10,300 are quite enough to generate a vast number of words. So it's highly parsimonious, highly productive as a strategy, word production strategy. The compounds are especially interesting. Notice this one that I've put in here. Amico is friend. Amicino is female friend. Coro is heart. So the words for boyfriend and girlfriend are cor amico and cor amicino. Dil ka mamla hai. So that's those give you lots of opportunities for nuance and therefore poetry. Cor amico, cor amicino. Basic French, basic German, the Alliance Française and the Goethe Institute say 100 to 200 hours plus homework. That's 100 to 200 hours of class interaction over several months and plus homework. How much time does basic Esperanto take? 40 hours. Imagine the kind of difference we are talking about. It's an astonishing saving of time. So really moderate effort, some effort, of course. Yes, of course, it's a language, right? But huge returns. And now you can actually answer that question that the Brazilian friend asks. Arranged marriage. Familia decidita exigo estas. And then you can carry on. Actually have a conversation about it. Imagine how difficult it would be to describe arranged marriage to someone in Brazil or Japan, right? If you didn't have the language. This in Esperanto, you can do that. One place where a lot of interesting things about Esperanto, the ideas behind Esperanto might be found is this manifesto that was launched in 1996 in Prague, in the World Congress of Esperanto in Prague. Then it was Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic. So the Praga Manifesto, you can find the information about it on the net, in the Wikipedia, for example. So these are some of the widely held beliefs about Esperanto. Linguistic democracy is one of probably the most important idea in Esperanto, right? Not being forced to master someone else's language. All of us who have struggled to master English understand this really well. And we also know many, many people who haven't succeeded, right? That's the nature of the world's language arrangement currently, right? That that you spend many, many years learning another language of someone else's language. You're forced to do that for livelihood reasons or whatever. You learn it, and then even after many years, you learn only at a basic level, right? How many of us don't, who among us doesn't know that you have students with 10 years of English or 8 years of English, they can hardly string a couple of sentences together, right? That's the way the world is, that after huge amount of effort, you just learn some basic language of someone else, right? This is such an important point that, let me say it again, but this time in Hindi. आज की भाषा प्रणाली कुछ इस तरह की है कि कुछ लोगों को जन्म से ही फायदा पहुंचाती है और बाकियों से ये चाहती है कि वो सालों भर की कोशिश करें, वर्षों भर का प्रयास करें, और किस लिए? एक साधारण योग्यता प्राप्त करने के लिए, एक मामूली काबिलियत हासिल करने के लिए। ऐसी भाषा प्रणाली तो बुनियादी तौर पर अलोकतांत्रिक है। It is fundamentally undemocratic, right? So this is a movement for linguistic democracy. It's also a movement for the Esperanto movement, also for transnational education. Actually, having a friend in Brazil with whom you can talk about, for example, the deforestation of the Amazon, personally, it's a huge difference from reading reports in the Guardian or the New York Times or the Hindu or Hindustan Times. It's pedagogical efficiency. Learning a foreign language always is difficult. Esperanto, it's much, much easier. It's also about multilingualism, is it not? You speak your language, you keep your language. You don't have to abandon your language in order to learn Esperanto. It's about linguistic rights. You have a right to use your language, and you have a right to communicate equally in any gathering. Esperanto gives you that. It's in respecting linguistic diversity. It's celebrating linguistic diversity. Esperanto does not see your mother tongue or your other tongues, your other languages as a barrier, as a disadvantage, right? And it's finally about emancipation, is it not? Freedom, the ability to be who you are, express what you want to say in Esperanto. So it has these core ideas about the politics, which talks to the politics of the current world order in quite profound ways, quite basic ways, and therefore it might merit interest of all of you who are interested in languages and translation. Books in Esperanto include this one, Asterix at the Olympic Games, Asterix ce la Olympiae ludoi, also from 1996 as it happens. Brilliant translation. And as translators, you know just how difficult it is to translate humor. This translates really well. It's very funny in Esperanto, as are the other Asterix that have been translated into Esperanto. Those of you who have read Asterix will know, the Asterix comics, will know how what a lot of wordplay is crucial, central to the humor in those comics. Here is an example. How to learn it, where to learn it? Well, there are free Esperanto courses. Perhaps the most interesting one might be this one, Lernu, lernu.net. Lernu translates as let us learn, lernu.net, a multilingual site for learning Esperanto. Yeah. So if you've got a pen and paper handy or something, please write this down so that it will be of some use. Another, of course, is this app, the Android and iPhone app called Duolingo, duolingo.com. Yeah, they have Esperanto courses, free Esperanto courses as well. So these might be two places to learn Esperanto. And so quite an interesting language structurally, and here is some information on how to learn it. What kind of community has grown up around it? Here is some data about that. The World Esperanto Association, Universala Esperanto Asociación, of which I'm a member, is headquartered in Rotterdam at the moment. It has something like 18,000 members in 100 plus countries. One of its previous presidents was my friend and mentor, Prabal Dasgupta, well-known linguist in India. So So it's a worldwide community. And Duolingo has suddenly opened up the language for a huge number of active learners. 8 lakh, 800,000 active learners. The Duolingo defines them as people who've accessed the app within the last 3 months, I think, something like that. So these are so many people interested in this idea of a easy international language, which is also fair, which is also just at the same time, which is quite something, right? About 150 to 200 books are published every year. The Esperanto Wikipedia has over 3 lakh articles, 300,000 articles. That's not bad at all, right? For a language that you may not even have heard of until this morning. 300,000 articles and counting. I'm an active contributor to articles on Indian literature in the Wikipedia. So 300,000 articles. It's the 35th biggest Wikipedia there is. Excuse me, out of the 200 or so Wikipedias. There's an annual conference that happens. In 2018, it was in Lisbon, in Portugal, Lisbono, Portugalio. 2019, it was the 104th, mind you, in Finland. And the next one, 2022, last couple of years, it's been an online conference, obviously, the pandemic being what it is. The next one is in Montreal, in Canada, the 107th. So Esperanto, the community has had considerable experience in bringing people together. These are conferences typically in which about 2,000 people from 90 countries or something participate. 90 countries. And for a week or 10 days, they're speaking to each other entirely in Esperanto. It's a remarkable phenomenon. It's a remarkable experience to be in an environment or ethos, as they say, ethoso, in like that, right? And there are, of course, plenty of online communities, Facebook, Twitter, Hypernity. Yeah. So there's a huge presence, not huge, well, how should I say, a small but significant presence in various ways across the world. We have a small club group in Bengaluru, Bengaluru Esperanto Rencontijo, and we meet, it's called Bero, as in berry. It's also a play on the words. And there is an Indian Esperanto Association as well, Federazio Esperanto de Barato, remember? Bharat, India. It's been going on from 1982. Let me conclude in the next 5 minutes or so with a couple of other things from Esperanto. Now, I started with some very bread and butter basic Esperanto, right? Mera naam ye hai, main yahan ka rehne wala hu. My name is this, I'm from Bangalore, that kind of thing. Let's end with some more complex Esperanto, some not bread and butter, but some kind of gourmet, I guess. You know the French word, right? Gourmet, high cuisine, right? Subtle, complex tastes, right? And not just your bread and butter, but gourmet. And what could be more gourmet than poetry? Hannah. So here's an example. Here are a couple of examples. So here is one example. Oh, by the way, before we move on, this is the group that meets, the Bero group, the Bengaluru group that meets in Cubbon Park, in the center of Bangalore, near MG Road, right? Lovely place to meet and lovely people. So this is one shot of us meeting. That little green book that you see in the young woman's hand is The Giving Tree. Some of you may know this book, little masterpiece by Shel Silverstein, and it's been translated into Esperanto by a Korean Esperantist. But okay, that said, let me come to some gourmet Esperanto. A verse from Faiz Ahmed Faiz. रात यूं दिल में तेरी खोई हुई याद आई, जैसे वीराने में चुपके से बहार आ जाए, जैसे सहराओं में हौले से चले बाद नसीम, जैसे बीमार को बेवजह करार आ जाए. बेवजह. जीनियस आदमी था सर. English translation. Last night, your faded memory filled my heart, like spring's calm advent in the wilderness, like the soft desert footfalls of the breeze, like peace, somehow, coming to one in sickness. By Victor Kiernan, the British translator of Fez. And my translation into Esperanto. Nocte venis en la coron via memoro, kiel en sovaĝejon kvieta printempo, kiel en deserton lanta vento, kiel al malsanul ial paco. A second piece of some gourmet Esperanto would be for translators interested in literature, all of you, that is, Shakespeare, of course. Would it not? So here's some Shakespeare. The famous Sonnet 18 of Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and oft is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou own'st. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. That sonnet has been translated at least twice into Esperanto, as far as I know. The one I'm about to show you is a translation by Reto Rossetti, an Italian Esperantist who lived for a long time in the UK. Sonetto dec hoc de Shakespeare, traducita de Reto Rossetti. Ciu mi comparu vin al tag somera? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Ciu mi comparu vin al tag somera? Vi estas ja pli bela cae serena. Mai floroin ofte vipas vent severa, cae tro maldauras la somero bena. Ien brulas la oculo del cielo, ien vuole jas gia vido ora, cae iam senbeligas ciu belo, lau voi natura au pro fatrigora. Sed iam ne velcos via plen somero, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. Sed iam ne velcos via plen somero, nec declinigios del bellezzo nun. La morto vin ne tenos cun fiero, se vin la vers eterna gardas iuna. Dum homo spiros cae oculoi vidos, vivante and vivanta vers visidos. Thank you. End of my talk. I'll stop sharing my presentation. I've just put in my email address here as well, rao.giridhar@apu, Azim Premji University.edu, education.in, India. Yeah. So feel free to contact me. If you're learning Esperanto, that'll be great. If you're planning to learn Esperanto, that's also great. Wonderful. Meanwhile, if you have questions, queries, comments, thoughts to share, most welcome. Thank you very much.